All right, so here I have the blocking text, and I'm in Illustrator now. And what I'm going to do is look at my layers. I've created a new blank layer above my locked onion skin sketch layer. And I'm going to use, for the first time in this class, the type tool, right? And it works very similarly in Photoshop and in Illustrator, but it's basically, it turns it into a little mini word processor. Before I do that, I want to set my color to just black, my foreground color, and I want my stroke turned off. And that's how the default for most fonts. Then I'm going to just click with my type tool in the upper left-hand corner, just like you would normally, and I'm going to type in my title with uppercase and lowercase where I want them. Mine is all uppercase, which is very common because that shows that spaces out a little bit better than upper and lowercase. Makes it easier to read. So, Texas Humility, my default is a very modern font called Myriad Pro. It's common to all computers, but I don't want that font. Or I don't want that typeface, rather. I keep screwing up. And the font, the whole site name, makes you think that this is a font. But fonts are actually the options you have to the typeface. So a font is this. Bold Italic is a font of the typeface Myriad Pro, if that makes any sense at all. So I'm going to try to keep using typeface, but I mess up a lot. It's a common mistake. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so I can see it clearly. Texas Humility. Now I'm going to duplicate that. Just Command-C, copy, make a new layer, lock the layer behind, and say edit, paste, or I can just do Command-V, and now I'm going to change that typeface. From the boring, default Myriad Pro to one of the ones I found on defont.com that I downloaded. And so one of them, I'll just go through my list here, is Texas Tango. So let me just look that up quick. You can actually just type it in. Texas Tango. I'm going to keep that one. Then I'm going to copy that, make a new layer, lock the layer behind, edit, paste, move it where you can see it, and I'm going to change this typeface now. It's just so you can see all the different versions and you can gauge it. Using the type tool, just like you would in a word processing program, you select it and then you can change the typeface to Texas Troop. Let's try that. And then I have at least one more, so I'm going to copy that. Make sure you select all the vector paths before you copy. New layer, edit, paste, move it to where you can see it. Use the type tool, select it to edit, and we're going to do Texas Slaughter. Now, there's no reason that the typefaces that were designed with Texas in their name, why those are any more valid than ones without Texas in their name. But that's just, we're getting into the process here. We're looking at our options. So then I copy this, Command-C, and I want you to have at least 3 typeface options to look at. To kind of see different directions you can go. And then this last one is serial publication. So I'll paste it. I'll move it where I can see it. I try to do them in order, so I'll move it down here. And then I will use the type tool, select it, and then serial publication. Now these are all typefaces that I have installed. And you'll notice, even though they're all 25 point, some of them look a lot bigger than others. So point size is built into the font design. And so far, I have 2 different text blocks. There's no reason they need to be the same font or the same typeface. So immediately I'm kind of thinking, I like this solution for the Texas, that one, and I like this solution for the humility. So I like them, I don't love them, they're not what I want yet. So now we're going to learn how to customize them. The advantage of keeping something in the type tool phase is that you can edit it, right? You can turn them on and off. These are the 2 I want to keep, so I'm going to just turn the others off, and then I'm going to unlock the one I want to use for Texas. Okay? Then I'm going to go to it, and I'm going to use the type tool again, and I'm going to select just Texas, copy it, lock it, turn it off, make a new layer, paste in place. And now, as a type tool, I'm going to try to make it match as much as I can my blocking. So how do I do that? Well, first, I select it all, and I can increase its point size, right? But you see that that's very standard. So the other way I can increase its, because these are vectors, the other way is I can use the large selection tool, not using the type tool, and I can stretch it. That's why the blocking is so helpful. I'm using that X to help me gauge the size. Okay. The next thing I can do is I could warp it, but actually I think I want to do that by hand. So now the last thing I want to play with is the kerning, the space between the letters. And I do that with the type tool. The type tool still works even after you've stretched it with the large selection tool. I'm going to select it, use the type tool, select between letters. So I select the A and the S, and if I hold down Option and then press with my arrows left and right, this is a really good tip for you designers. I can adjust the kerning individually. Before I learned this, that you can hold down Option and just use your left and right arrows to adjust kerning between letters, I would always build in a little micro space between each typeface letter and then adjust the font size of that space. This is much more effective, and it actually allows you to do overlaps, right? Where you can do kind of custom treatments like that. And you can do it to the whole word if you need to. So when you're adjusting your kerning, you want there to be kind of an equal amount of negative space around each letter. So sometimes you can just adjust the kerning overall and get what you want, but often you have to keep it defined. Like between the E and the X, I definitely want those closer together. And the A and the X, I need those further apart, at least for now. Whoops. A and the X. And then the A and the S, those can be closer together. So while it's still in the type tool, I suggest you play with your kerning. Then you can copy that. This is just being very careful. Lock it, make a new layer, edit, paste in place, turn off the layer underneath. Now we are going to vectorize the font. Now, the font was, or the typeface was already a vector, but it was set to be type, which doesn't allow you to actually edit the individual letter forms besides stretching them. It's like a smart layer. So in order to change these to vector shapes, vector filled paths that we can mess with, I go to the large selection tool and I right click, and then I say create outlines. It's just like how you outline strokes to turn them into filled paths. And once you do that, lo and behold, I have anchor points. And once you have anchor points, you know what to do. It separates each letter into its own, as long as they're not touching, into its own filled path. And then you can adjust them individually. So if I take my T, now I can rotate it using the large selection tool. I can stretch it. I want to stretch the top but not the bottom. So how do I do that? I can use the lasso and just lasso the top half. And then use the small selection tool and move it, right? But I want one half at a time, so I'm going to do it like this. It is where I wish that that Illustrator had a warp tool that made more sense, like Photoshop's warp tool. But it's good to take, individual control of it sometimes. So I'm going to find those points. I'm getting in the weeds here trying to select individual anchor points. So let's keep it simpler. Do that with the T, then lock it. Now mess with the E, large selection tool, rotate it. The X is the only one, because I'm doing this kind of arced presentation. The X is the only one that's going to stay where it is. I want to stretch this out a little bit. Just the E, not the whole thing. That's why I have the group opened up so I can see these individual paths. All right, now the X, actually let's extend that a little bit bigger. So this is one way to customize, just kind of stretch them out individually. That's actually kind of interesting, flowing them into each other. Might play with that. Lock them as you go. And we just use what we know about Illustrator. Now, I am much more of an illustrator than I am a graphic designer. And so often when I need to do type design, I'll look for a lot of inspiration. And there's no shortage, right? There have been lots of logo types, title flags that have used Texas, whether they're sports teams or fast food restaurants or whatever. Texas Instruments. But I really kind of appreciate when designers try to fulfill a vision. And what I'm getting really interested in now are these negative shapes between the letters that are made. And what I feel is missing out is the T. I want that connection of the T at the bottom. And then I can like smooth these all out and merge them together. But that's looking kind of nice. That S thing is a little weird right there. So